Welcome back, everybody. We're really diving deep today with this article, Seek First to Understand.
Yeah.
I mean, this piece, it really tackles, how to deal with tough times, and it doesn't shy away from the hard questions.
Especially relevant, I think, now with the background of the article, a devastating election result and, this anxiety about the future.
Totally. And it kicks off with this powerful question, right? What is your stance before what is here to be lived? So it's not about, ignoring what's happening. It's how do we choose to face it?
And that choice, the article says, starts with understanding, but not just like surface level. It's about understanding those facing systemic challenges, really listening to them before offering solutions.
It makes you think, right? How often do we jump in with solutions without truly getting the complexities of the issue? But wouldn't that require us to face some hard truths about our own biases? I mean, could they even unconsciously shape our efforts to understand?
That's a really good point. You're right. It dives right into that.
Mhm.
The article really pushes for deep self-awareness, especially during uncertainty. It says we got to understand ourselves, our reactions, even our potential trauma responses before we can truly understand others.
You said trauma responses. Can you unpack that a bit? What are they and how could they be affecting us without us even realizing it?
Sure. So trauma responses can show up in different ways, often from past experiences that get triggered by stuff happening now.
Hmm.
Could be like intense anxiety, fear, panic, or even withdrawing from people. The article emphasizes knowing the difference between those past traumas and actual dangers right now.
So it's not denying our feelings, but getting where they come from. The article also talks about self-care practices like therapy, embodiment, even things like prayer and meditation. What's the link there?
Well, they're all different, but they offer tools for self-awareness and handling our inner responses.
Hmm.
Embodiment, for example, is about connecting with your body, how it reacts to emotions, stress.
Like getting to know your inner world better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the article suggests that through these practices, we can see when we're triggered, create a space between the trigger and our reaction, and ultimately respond better.
It reminds me of that line, human beings have never been completely safe. Total safety has never been part of the deal. It's kind of jarring, but it points to accepting uncertainty as part of life. But is that really possible when fear and anxiety are so strong?
That's where the article's take on hope gets interesting. It says hope isn't optimism. True hope comes from acknowledging suffering, not avoiding it. And it uses the work of Byung-Chul Han, who says hope pushes us towards new things, the unknown, embracing uncertainty, rather than clinging to expectations.
So it's not pretending everything's fine, but being open to whatever comes. But it doesn't stop at personal stuff. It takes understanding and applies it outward to those we disagree with, which is where it gets really tough.
Absolutely. Seeking to understand the other, especially those with views we might find weird or even repulsive, is probably the hardest part of all this.
Yeah, it's easy to judge and dismiss those with different opinions. The article even says, we want to understand them beyond the caricature that has been fed to us. But how do we move past those ideas? Where do we even start?
Well, it starts with recognizing that even those we totally disagree with, they're still people, shaped by all sorts of experiences and influences.
So instead of just dismissing them, we ask, what might have led them to this view?
Exactly. It's about trying to get the fears, hopes, experiences behind their perspective.
Yeah.
And that takes a shift from judgment to curiosity.
You mentioned cognitive biases earlier. Doesn't that mean even our efforts to understand are kind of flawed? How do we get over that?
That's so important. We all have biases, right?
Yeah.
Those mental shortcuts. But just knowing they exist is the first step to lessening their impact. The article highlights intellectual humility, admitting we don't know everything and could be wrong.
So approaching understanding with openness and a willingness to challenge what we think.
Exactly. And this ties into another big idea the article brings up, the difference between technical change and adaptive change. Technical change meaning problems with clear solutions. But adaptive change meaning we got to learn, adapt, even question our core beliefs.
Like realizing the old maps don't work in uncharted territory.
Exactly. It even has this anecdote about experts being as accurate as a dart-throwing chimpanzee, showing how expertise can be limited in complex situations.
Wow, that's a powerful image. Makes me think of that quote about certainty being a sin. The article mentions it about the film Conclave. But wouldn't some say we need a bit of realistic pessimism to really face these challenges? Is there a danger in being too open, too trusting?
That's a valid point. And the article isn't saying to have blind faith or naive optimism. It's about a balance, acknowledging the complexities and potential problems, but staying open to possibility and growth. That openness, it argues, is where real strengths and resilience come from.
Facing the unknown with courage and a willingness to learn. And this brings us back to community. The article quotes, Thich Nhat Hanh, saying, "The next Buddha will be a community practicing understanding and loving kindness."
Such a beautiful quote. It captures the power of collective wisdom and support in uncertain times. Individual efforts towards understanding are stronger when shared with others who believe the same.
So it's not just seeking understanding alone, but building a collective understanding that creates empathy and compassion.
Exactly. And these communities can be anything from local groups to online networks connected by values or interests. They give a space for learning, growing, and supporting each other, especially when things are tough.
Like a safety net woven from shared experiences and a commitment to understanding. But wouldn't creating that take huge effort, especially in a world so divided? How do we even start bridging those gaps?
It takes effort for sure, but the article suggests the rewards are huge. It starts with small individual acts of understanding, listening to someone with a different view, asking questions, resisting judgment.
Creating those tiny moments of connection that can spread outwards, building more understanding in our families, workplaces, communities.
Exactly. And those individual actions contribute to a bigger shift towards a more compassionate and interconnected world.
That leads to the article's final message, which is really personal and almost poetic. It talks about radical openness, cherishing every moment, and recognizing the preciousness of life in all its messy beauty.
That's where it uses a message channeled by Elizabeth Gilbert from Love itself.
Huh?
It tells us to stay radically open and alive, to appreciate every moment and recognize that even the painful times are precious in a way.
It's a reminder to savor every moment, right? Life is unpredictable and doesn't last forever.
And it challenges us to accept all parts of life, the joy and sorrow, the good and bad, because by embracing it all, we truly come alive.
That part about savoring every moment really resonated with me. I've been going through a rough patch, and it reminds me to be grateful for the little things, the simple joys, even when things are hard.
It's about changing our focus from what we don't have to what we do have, recognizing that even the hard times make our lives richer.
It's a reminder to be present, be grateful, and approach life with awe and wonder. This has been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation. We've only scratched the surface of seeking first to understand.
And that's what makes it so amazing. It's a lifelong journey of discovery and growth, a constant process of opening ourselves to the world.
We've covered so much, from understanding those we disagree with to accepting uncertainty and finding strength in community. What's next? How do we turn these ideas into actions in our daily lives?
That's the exciting part, right?
Yeah.
Putting it into practice, weaving, seeking first to understand into how we live.
So less theory, more like actually living it out in the world and in ourselves.
Exactly. And it starts with small but powerful changes. Like when you disagree, instead of getting defensive, stop and ask questions to really get their side.
Like that curiosity hack the article talked about. Instead of judging, you genuinely want to learn. But how do we do that when emotions are strong?
It's tough, especially when you're triggered or feeling threatened. That's where those self-awareness things we talked about come in. The more you know yourself, the better you can choose curiosity over just reacting.
Like building up those inner muscles of self-control and compassion. But what about when understanding seems impossible? Like with views that are just morally wrong? Doesn't seeking to understand become just accepting it?
That's a huge question. And it doesn't mean condoning harmful stuff. It's about seeing the human context behind those views, the experiences, fears, influences that shape them.
So separating the person from their viewpoint, you get their story without agreeing with their conclusion.
Exactly. And that lets you have real dialogue, even about tough stuff. Building bridges, not walls.
Which brings us back to the article's message about how everything is connected. It's not just me understanding, but helping create a world that's more compassionate and understanding.
Right. And those big changes start with small acts of kindness and understanding in our own lives, families, work, communities.
So we can't change the whole world alone, but we can create ripples that spread outwards. It's about the power of small, consistent action.
Exactly. And those actions can be simple things.
Yeah.
Really listening to someone different, being kind to a stranger, choosing curiosity instead of judging.
Shifting from I know to I want to learn.
And that can change everything. It opens you to new possibilities, deeper connections, a richer life.
This has been eye-opening. It's clear seeking first to understand isn't just an idea, it's a way of life that needs effort and commitment.
It's a lifelong adventure of opening ourselves to the world, embracing what we don't know, and building connections based on compassion and curiosity.
We hope this deep dive gave you some insights and inspiration. Now it's your turn. What could you understand better? What assumptions do you need to challenge? And how can you be more radically open? Until next time, keep diving deep and keep seeking to understand.